Thank you for joining us today on our session, How Drones Are Changing the Business World. So today we will be exploring the role of drones for businesses in the new normal, how they keep us safe, as well as how they can help businesses achieve sustainability to weather through this extraordinary period in the economy. My name is Iza and I'm with SHRDC, and together with my colleague Lynn, we'll be your moderators for today. Right, before we begin, I'd just like to go through some housekeeping rules for today. Your audio and video capabilities will be disabled during the webinar, but if you could please just check on your respective devices that you are muted, that would be great. The raise hand reaction during the webinar will not be attended, unfortunately, due to our constraint on time. So if you have any questions, please utilize the chat box. For today's session, Yulin and I will be happy to accommodate. Also, we recommend selecting the speaker view that is available on your right-hand corner ribbon, on the ribbon on your screen for optimal viewing. And also, if you have any questions in relation to today's topic, you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen, which will be addressed at the end of the presentation session today. Right, now, before we move on to the main event, I'd first like to call Yilin, our Senior Manager for Communications here in SHRDC, for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Iza. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking time off this morning to be with us on our webinar. We're very excited today, and we're very pleased to host today's webinar on how drones are changing the business world, delivered to you in partnership with Drone Academy Asia and MASSA and MAJECA. Now, SHRDC, or in full, Selangor Human Resource Development Center, is a skills training center based in Shah Alam, and we specialize in workforce and talent development training. Founded in 1992, we're 28 years old this year. We offer a host of training programs, both technical and soft skills. Our flagship programs include Industry 4.0 competency training, solar PV, mechatronics, change management, and leadership. And over the last 28 years, we have trained over 90,000 workforce trainees and apprentices. And with regards to drone training, we are very pleased to be partnering with Drone Academy Asia, one of the leading drone training providers in Malaysia and the region. We are certain that today's session will provide very interesting insights into the relatively new world of drones, how they work for us, and in particular, how the pandemic has accelerated its use and possibilities. For any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out to myself or Iza via the chat box. You can post your questions in the Q&A box, and all of us will be at hand to support you with any inquiries that you might have. Thank you and have a pleasant session.
All right, thanks, Yilin. Now I'd like to call Ms. Ng Su Fun, Executive Secretary representing MASSA and MAJECA, for some brief words.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Iza. Can you all hear me? Okay, a very good morning to everyone. My name is Ng Su Fan, and I represent two associations today. One is Malaysia South-South Association, MASSA, and also MAJECA, which is Malaysia-Japan Economic Association. So on behalf of MASSA and MAJECA, let me send all participants our greetings and welcome this morning to this webinar. Let me just take this opportunity to introduce some of these two organizations that I represent here this morning. First one is MASSA. This is an organization, a business organization that was formed in 1991 with the support of Yang Muhammad Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad at that time, when he was the 4th Prime Minister of Malaysia. This business association is committed to assisting its members, who are Malaysian companies, to network and to do business with the developing countries of the South. So over the years, MASSA has organized numerous events and missions to many developing countries, and we have assisted members to avail the business opportunities in these developing countries. Today, these businesses have established their brands, their products and services across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. And MASSA is still continuing these bridging efforts with these developing nations, promoting new sectors where Malaysians have competitive edge today. So I just want to acknowledge also Yang Berbahagia Datuk T.Y. Lee, who has logged on with us this morning. He's the Honorary Secretary of MASSA, and also all our MASSA members who have logged on this morning. Another organization that is represented here today is MAJECA. This is again also another non-profit economic association that was formed more than 40 years ago. This organization has its roots way back when Malaysia, soon after its independence, turned to Japan for friendship and assistance to develop its economy. The government of Malaysia encouraged the formation of MAJECA, and it has a corresponding counterpart organization in Japan known as JAMECA, Japan-Malaysia Economic Association. And MAJECA comprised of Malaysian business entities whose main objective, amongst others, is to seek a transfer of technologies and businesses from Japan and to forge Japan-Malaysian joint ventures. Through its annual joint conferences, many joint ventures have been forged, and today Japanese industrial products, technology products and services, food and lifestyle products are evident in Malaysia. There is also now an increasing trend of Malaysian investments going into Japan. Japan is a very big market for Malaysia. So both these organizations are led by a prominent team of committee members with Tan Sri Azman Hashim as its president. So ladies and gentlemen, the Malaysian government has been taking steps for Malaysia to transform, adopt and embrace the new digital age. So likewise in the private sector, MASSA and MAJECA have also to embark on a deliberate program for the interest of its members to create awareness of the changes brought on by Industry 4.0, and more importantly, how to identify the economic potential and opportunities for new businesses to come on stream, or to conduct our present businesses in a new and more productive and efficient way using digital and these new technologies. And the current global disruptions brought on by COVID pandemic today have accelerated the digital adoption of these technologies in every sphere of society. I just also want to, at this point, acknowledge a number of participants who have joined us. And these include from representatives from JAGAM, which is Japan Graduates Association of Malaysia. This is an associate of MAJECA. We have Dr. Vince C, who is logged on. We also have another member from all the way from Fukuoka, Japan, who is logged on with us. I also want to acknowledge the presence of our friends from Bangladesh, Malaysia Chamber of Commerce. Members of the BMCCI also logged on, I can see. And also we have representatives from a number of government ministries and agencies such as MITI, MIMOS, CIRIM, USM, MPOB. So I'd like to thank you all for responding to our invitation and to take time to attend this webinar. But last but not least, I want to thank our co-organizers, the Selangor Human Resource Development Center, for organizing and for facilitating this event, Ms. Ku Yilin and her team at SHRDC, and also to Drone Academy, Ms. Erin and your team, and also to our speakers, Mr. Ken Koo of Polar Drone and Mr. Elvin Tan of Drone Academy. We look forward to your presentations and hope to learn from it and our applications. So thank you very much. So I have pleasure hand you back to Ms. Eza. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upun. All right, now before we move on to our first speaker for today, I'd just like to briefly introduce him, Mr. Elvin Tan from Drone Academy Asia. He's a firm believer in the usage of drones and is enthusiastic in the capabilities and application of drones in the 21st century and aims to co-develop and deliver drone course modules that empower participants to implement them into their workflow for greater efficiency and safety practices. Welcome, Alvin.
Thank you, Eza. Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, welcome. My name is Alvin, and I'm the UAV Operations and Training Manager at Drone Academy Asia. So first of all, yeah, thank you to SHRDC, MASSA, and MAJECA for this opportunity to speak today on this great morning on the subject of drones, and more specifically, how drones are changing the business world. Right. So let me introduce. Let me introduce my Drone Academy Asia. We are Malaysia's #1 enterprise drone training academy. We provide training to upskill the Malaysian workforce. We are also partners with SHRDC in providing any drone-related training. And as well as we are also supported by DJI, the world's leader in drone technology. They have a global market share of more than 70%. So I'm sure if I were to ask you to picture an image of a drone in your mind right now, it's a good guess that it would be a picture of a DJI drone easily. And as well, we are also supported by Polar Drone, which is Malaysia's pioneer enterprise UAV solutions provider and the Tier 1 DJI enterprise distributor in Malaysia. So over here, we have a gallery of our previous training sessions conducted in Cyberjaya, which is a 35 minutes drive from Kuala Lumpur city. We are based in Cyberjaya, but we do travel around Malaysia to provide training across the country. What I would say is unique about ourselves is that our training is certified by DJI, and we have support from Polar Drone, so the courses are also updated by the industry, and it's whatever is taught is be assured is what the market requires at that time. And our courses range from the beginner to intermediate and as well advanced levels. So our courses, our trainings can be customized based on different requirements or different workflow. So it really depends. And with that, actually, we've witnessed growth in drone usage, not only in Malaysia, but globally as well, which brings me to this slide. There was a study conducted by the Drone Industry Insights. So recently, they found out that the global drone market will grow to about $42 billion by the year 2025. So that's not too far away. That's barely 4.5 years' time. So a very big, remarkable statistic for us to ponder upon what kind of changes drones can bring to our lives, various industries, commercial applications, and which is why I think we are here today to speak about today's topic, how drones are changing the business world. So let's look at the drone applications in the following slides. So today we'll be talking about the unmanned aerial system, UAS applications. So let's look. So first of all, I would like to brief everybody on this call today, what is a complete drone solution, what makes up a total solution. So first we need the hardware, which is the platform. So not necessarily a DJI drone, it can be any type of drone, as long as you need you have the platform. And then we'll need a payload. So a payload is not necessarily a camera. It can be a box to carry your payload. It can be a speaker for search and rescue purposes. It can be a beacon. Yeah, it could be other types of camera, not only RGB cameras, it could be thermal cameras, it could be multispectral cameras. There are many types of payloads. And for the third aspect, last but not least, is the software. So without software, actually, a platform and a payload, the drone itself is more like a toy. So with software, it empowers the platform together with the payload, and you can plan your missions, you can execute your missions with software, and with software, of course, you can do processing after you collect all your data, as well as the analysis part of your data. So as an example, if you're doing photography or videography, an example of a platform would be a DJI Phantom 4 Pro, and its 20 megapixel high resolution camera, which would be the payload of that Phantom 4 Pro. And a software, for example, that will be used to control the drone would be a DJI Go 4. And let's not forget ourselves, the operator, or the drone operator, which is yourselves, which is the human aspect, which can control all of these three parts. So I'm sure we're all familiar with what we're most familiar with is for a drone usage is this, to take beautiful aerial photography or videography for promotional purposes, such as in sports or even nature or any architectural type of themes. So people are more familiar with these kind of purposes just for the artistic aspect, for promotional photos and videos. But actually there's much more to it, and that's what we're going to be discussing in the next few slides. Yeah. So these photos are actually from the 2018 SkyPixel annual competition. So these are one of the top 3 winners in their own aspects, so sports, nature, and architecture. So you can have a look at SkyPixel's website if you want to see more beautiful aerial photos. So commercial applications. So let's take a look at all these major industries. We have construction, we have agriculture, inspection, energy, media, and public safety. So construction, I'm sure in Malaysia, we always have construction going on. People need it for progress monitoring or site surveying or even area mapping. Agriculture also pretty big in Malaysia. We have palm oil and even our rice paddy fields in Malaysia, very important sector. Inspection as well, also important, relatable to construction. We need to inspect certain areas. We'll take a look at why we need drones for safety aspect to reduce risk for inspection. And then energy, an upcoming sector in Malaysia. For example, here we have solar panels or solar farms in Malaysia for alternative clean energy. And to be able to inspect it more efficiently and in a more productive manner, then we can also use drones. For media and creative, these are the ones, this industry is the one that we are most familiar with. People who do it for films or even movies, any types of promotional videos. Yeah, media and creative also, they use drones. And the last one would be public safety for things like border crossing or animal monitoring at night, nocturnal animals, and yeah, public safety. So you can see it's using a different type of camera, like a night vision or a thermal infrared camera, to be able to see in low light situations or even almost in dark. All right. So for the first industry we'll be discussing today is construction and mining. Right. So if you are able to do an area mapping of your site, let's say, for example, we have on the screen here, we can see a mining site using software processing. This is using the Agisoft Metashape software. We are able to see a very high resolution images of your site. You can even scroll in, look at your contour lines, adding all the details. You can look at your stockpile. You can perform volumetric calculations. You can see all the contours in the map, and so you can see on your screen right now all the different heights or altitudes of the land, which would be all done in the software, just collected from images or data from the drone that is collected. And with that, you can create certain models, such as, for example, one example of a model is digital elevation model, which you can produce a contour map. You can introduce your contour lines here. You can, of course, add colors to identify what color. For example, blue identifies 84 meters, and the red color identifies 122 meters. So each color represents a different height, and this is good to understand different locations, different terrains of that location. And it's easy for you, especially for land developers, if you want to do a quick visualization of the area and to identify potential landslides, to be able to mitigate and to put control measures into that area. So you can produce a contour map as well from aerial maps. For construction, another type of benefit is that from this auto mosaic map, you can see it's very high resolution. It's not a satellite image, it's taken from the drone image, so you can zoom in all the way like this, and you can perform measurements. So right now we are measuring the length, of course, and then after that we can do a measured area, which is pretty important. And not only that, so we have length, we have area, we can also do volumetric calculation. So these are quite important and quite easy features for us to use all in the software after we've flown our drone and collected our data. So as mentioned in the previous slide, you can also perform volumetric calculations. So especially in mining or construction sector, where you need to take note of the stockpile that you have in your area how much stockpile you want to bring in today, or how much have you used for the day, you can quickly send up your drone, fly up in the sky, take the images, and then process it, and you can calculate how much volume was used or needs to be filled up at your site. This is important for estimation of work required, for example, at landfills or places that need to flatten their land. So you can keep track of the amount of materials that you have or you will need to make sure your workflow is smooth. As well, I think for management oversight, our management is more interested in this to see the real-time updates of your project, to see whether things are on schedule, whether it's on time, because we do not want to delay our projects, because time is money. So we want to make sure our project timeline is following according to schedule. And as well, since we have an image of the whole site, we can keep track of the location of the equipment. So we can see if certain equipment needs to be at certain location, we can make sure that it is at that location at that time. So this is pretty good for management oversight. And if you're from the land planning or you're in the management for your local jurisdiction area, if you want to have an aerial view of your area that you look to develop, or you want to assess the environmental aspect of that land, or undeveloped or vacant land, you can do that. Just fly up the drone, take a pictures, and then you can produce such a map with all these detail, and then you can draw lines and totally mark out which areas you want to develop first or leave it vacant, or which areas you want to put it in phases like this, for example, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You can do that. So it's quite important for this, for quick and detailed city development planning. So other than that, in construction, if you want to draw line works, so between engineers, when they're talking between their teams or when they're constructing, it is important for them to display the planimetric features such as the roads or the manholes or buildings or the landmarks on that map. So it's easy for them to analyze and to communicate with each other using the various engineering software. So a lot of benefits for construction, especially if you're moving a lot of earthwork, you can monitor, you can know how much volume to take, to fill, to cut, to plan. Your logistics will be much more organized with all these data and all these inputs, and you can monitor it from time to time. So yeah, I hope you understand this part of the construction. Before we move on to the next sector, important sector, which is agriculture. So with agriculture, when we want to monitor our plantation or our site, we can send a drone up again, take an aerial map, and we can have a better understanding of our plantation area. We can produce an auto mosaic map, like you can see on this screen here, which is a very high resolution map. You can use this for your long-term planning and to make sure you use every square inch of land so that any unused land is not affecting your revenue. So every land that you use will of course help with your business. So we want to make sure all of it is used and is part of your plan. So with image processing, with software, or we can produce, such as on the right, you can see the different elevations. You can use GIS software is available on the market. There are plenty like QGIS, ArcGIS, or Global Mapper. With this kind of information, you can do your planning, and also you can speak to your teams on which areas needs more attention or which areas needs more improvement, for example. So you can produce this kind of map. Other than that, you can also digitize your map. The main reason why you want to digitize your map is so that you can have a more focused view on the infrastructures available. For example, we have labeled the roads on this plantation area. We also label the bodies of water, the streams or the river, so we can identify distinct elements immediately at a glance. Just because it's also digitized and it's colored, and immediately I know which road I can use, or which road I need to go to, or which body of water I need to pay attention to. So you can see distinct elements immediately just because you digitize your map, just like this. Another benefit that you can use drones for to help you in your agriculture sector is tree counting. So you can see on this map, there are many trees on just this map itself. There are hundreds and hundreds of trees. So imagine if you're having a ranger on the ground, or have your worker to do manual tree tagging. That's a very tedious, very manual kind of work, very laborious. So if you can use software, you can identify the trees immediately from this picture because it's a very high resolution photo, and you can do individual tagging to count the amount of trees. So tree counting is important mainly for auditing purposes. You want to know how many trees you have in this area, and for auditing purposes, or your yield counting, you want to count how much yield you can achieve in this current season, and as well as give the trees, each of them a identity, which is a number, so you can identify which tree, for example, needs more attention, more fertilizers or pesticides. So once you identify the trees, you have a number. You can also use drones to monitor your tree's health. You can base it on the foliage colors. If you can see those in the red circles, red dotted circles are slightly yellowish. They don't look very healthy, so they might need more attention. I can immediately tell my workers, can you go to this tree at this location? And can you find out what's wrong with this tree? Why is it not healthy? Or why is it having stunted growth? We can see on the bottom of the screen, which is slightly blue. We can always monitor them. Or even dead plants, we can decide what to do with the dead plants. Do we need to immediately replace them, chop it down? We can decide just by having all this information and data at our hands. And once we identify the trees that need more attention, we can then apply fertilizers and also pesticides to those specific plants or specific trees that we want to pay attention to. So since we are not doing a blanket fertilizing or blanket pesticide application, which means that we are using our fertilizers and pesticides more efficiently, which we save on our resources. So this is one way of strategizing how to use your fertilizers and your pesticides, just by getting all this information from one aerial map. So you can do this. You can plan your application based on your plant density, or you can plan your pest control just using the aerial mapping. And as well, of course, to monitor your plant growth or your plant health over a few months, what you can do is to take different types of, the same map, but over a different type. Let's say in the first month and the second month, you can do that. And then you compare them over this time frame. And then once you compare them, you can identify and mark out, as you can see on the red color on the differentiation map, you can see that is the differences. It could show whether the plants have grown or the plants are stunted. Then you can see the main difference between the first month and the second month. So it's a comparison, it's more like a progress report. So far what I've shown you so far is using the normal RGB cameras that we're all familiar with, that we have on our smartphones. But what if we have a different type of camera, which is called the multispectral camera? With using a multispectral sensor or camera, it collects different types of data from different wavelengths. And with that, we just put it in the software, it does some calculation, and we can see on this map itself, we can diagnose, for example, the ones in green color are healthy plants or plants itself. And then the red color identifies as unhealthy plants or stunted growth as well, or it can also represent the land, the road itself. So with this, we can identify on a scale for multispectral, if we're using NDVI to normalize vegetation index, if it's on a scale for -1 to 1, 1 being the healthiest and -1 being the least healthy, then we can have a number, and we can also calculate which plants need more attention just by using this different type of data. So with this, we can see immediately the areas marked in red, which needs more attention from us. An RGB camera may not be able to see this. Definitely, this is a different type of data that is also quite useful for agriculture. So once we identified the areas that we need more attention for, when we want to monitor it over a period of time, we can make quick and simple decisions. We can detect irregularities or any issues we need to pay attention to, and we can perform a crop health monitoring. When with this information at hand, we can solve problems faster and also make more precise decisions and to use our resources more efficiently. All right, so for now, this one would be about the energy sector. So energy sector, they mainly use a thermal camera. So what is a thermal camera? A thermal camera can see on the infrared spectrum. So all bodies emit heat. Even ourselves, we emit heat more than our surroundings. And this camera can detect this heat infrared, translate this heat energy into something that we can see on the image, as you can see on your screen. So it produces thermograms, and also it can analyze it using tomography, and you can see in the dark, complete darkness. So this camera, this sensor, it specifically looks at the infrared wavelength, not the RGB or visible light that we usually see. Okay. And what can we use this sensor for applications? So power line inspection, or telecommunication towers, we want to inspect any hotspots. Solar panel inspection, again, we want to see any irregularities in the solar panel itself. You can use it for search and rescue if you're looking for someone in a huge jungle area or mangrove or swamp. You can easily identify or specify the human body temperature, then you can immediately log on to that temperature and find that person in a huge forest, which will immediately help the search and rescue team to find the person. And of course, I mentioned earlier, you can use it for precision agriculture, as well as, yeah, the last one on our right, which is firefighting. So sometimes in firefighting, when there's too much smoke around, the fireman cannot see. But with a thermal camera, we can identify where the sources of heat is, where the hotspots are, and we can tell the firemen to direct their energy and their resources, such as the water, to put out the fire immediately and more efficiently. Let's take an example for solar panel inspection. When we're using a camera, let's say in your solar farm or on your rooftop, for example, if you have a solar panel, what we want to look for are irregularities in your solar panel. Are they heating evenly? Do we have certain hotspots in your solar panel? Or even here, on the second image, you can see a cracked solar panel, which means your efficiency of converting solar energy into electrical energy is not very, it will definitely reduce your efficiency. Or we want to look at certain areas where it's not heating up evenly, certain hotspots, or the alignment of the solar panel. So solar farms are not small, they cover a huge area. And definitely if you can use a drone with a thermal camera, you can cover the area much more faster than if you were to send an engineer on foot to inspect the solar panels one by one. And with using solar panels, so when you take a photo or image of this, you can already get the latitude and longitude. You can immediately tell your team or your engineers to go to these specific solar panels to go and fix the problem. Maybe something is wrong with it, please have a look at it and to check the solar panels. And here we have an example of how a thermal map, an aerial thermal map looks like. So once we've flown our drone around, we've taken our photos, then we produce this map. Then this is how we can see. Of course, we can zoom in as well to look closer at certain hotspots, certain temperatures that we think it's not supposed to have. Then we can zoom in. So this is how it looks like. All right, and the next one for the third sector would be inspection. So mainly why people want to use drones in the inspection sector is that we can safely identify concerns in real time. Immediately, we can just deploy the drone, immediately fly into the dangerous, risky areas. Let's say on the roof, for example, as you can see on the screen, a drone can cover bigger area and get to greater heights. So yeah, drones are not afraid of heights, but some humans are. I'm not sure about you, but maybe I'm a bit afraid of heights. But can you just imagine placing someone on the roof with a full body harness, full protection equipment? So if you can reduce the risk of putting someone up in dangerous areas, on roofs, on steep slopes, on any other risky areas, I would say that would be beneficial to your organization. And in certain areas such as this, under a bridge, imagine yourself dangling from using safety harness or in the crane, which is in a rather awkward position, I would say. So instead, why not deploy a drone within less than 5 minutes, let the drone fly to those dangerous areas, attach a camera which can on top of the drone. For example, this is a DJI M200. You can attach a drone on top or below, but for this case, we're inspecting under the bridge. So we place the camera on top, and the camera can do definitely can see much more data than what our eyes can see, and it can detect any faults or any inspections in under the bridge, for example, much quicker, and as well as a zoom level much better than our eyes can see, human eyes can see. So we don't place our contractors or our workers at risky areas, such as the ones you can see on your left on the screen. And the next one for inspection purposes. So post-disaster, so a few years ago when this monument was burned out, after the inspection, after the incident, then we can fly a drone up to see what was damaged for inspection purposes, what kind of remodeling work that needs to be done. We can immediately fly a drone and get the results that we need. As well as some people also use this for awareness, to let other people know what happened to this building post-disaster or catastrophe. So, yeah. So there are three main reasons why professionals, or why we need training for drones. So number one is for safety. It's our number one priority. We don't want to risk anybody's lives. We want to make sure safety is always our utmost priority. And then we want to reduce the risk placing our people in different risky situations, dangerous situations. But of course, drones also increase the work efficiency. It can deploy much quicker, can reach areas that humans can't reach much faster. You can get the data that you want immediately, and as well as you can process and analyze the data very efficiently. So with using drones, you can get the most out of your tech investment. And as well, if you send your workers for professional drone training, we are advancing the workforce skills of Malaysians or even your countrymen of workforce skills. So, which is quite important for the Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? So thank you. You can contact us, Drone Academy Asia, or SHRDC for any detailed information on training programs. You can visit our Facebook page. And with that, I end my presentation. So I'll pass it back to Eza.
Right. Thank you, Alvin, for your presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our second speaker today, Ken Koo, who is the head of marketing at Polar Drone, whose personal goal is to create greater awareness and conversations about the way drones can be used to enrich our everyday lives, both personally and professionally. You please, Mr. Ken.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you, Eza, for the introduction, and thank you so much to SHRDC, MASSA, and MAJECA for this opportunity to speak to all of you. My name is Ken. I'm from Polar Drone. I'm the head of marketing, and I'm very excited today to speak to you about the topic of drones in the new normal, specifically how they are saving lives, as well as helping businesses become more sustainable as we face these uncertainties ahead of us. So without further ado, this is an overview of what I'll be covering today. So I'll be building on what Alvin from Drone Academy Asia has been speaking about. Alvin gave quite a big picture and a good overview of what drones are used for. I'll be speaking to you specifically in the context today of how COVID-19 has prompted quite extraordinary uses of the current drone technology we have, as well as looking into specific examples of how drones have transformed industrial workflows within certain sectors. And I'll be looking at that through some case studies in the safety inspection sector, the construction industry, as well as the oil palm sector. So let's start with COVID-19. So I think we've all experienced COVID-19, and we've all experienced it both on a personal level as well as on a business level. On a personal level, we've of course had to social distance, but as business professionals, it's also changed the way we work, and it's changed the way that we interact with one another. I think we've all experienced work from home. We've all experienced working through online platforms, and this has put a lot of pressure on how we interact and make decisions, as well as how we choose to streamline our operations moving forward. And it's on the one hand, we see COVID-19 as a tragedy, in terms of human lives, as well as in terms of just economic growth. Perhaps you might say that, but it's also a very good opportunity. In fact, it's the opportunity for businesses to reflect and relook at the way that we do business, and relook at the opportunities that are out there for us to automate and innovate. And I think all of this is in line with the push towards achieving IR 4.0, which I think all businesses want to are looking to hit within the next few years. And we can see that COVID-19 specifically has caused us to rethink the way that we approach labor, especially since we no longer are able to work, at least for the time being, in close spaces with a lot of people at the same time. So how can we reduce our reliance on labor, specifically low-skilled labor? You know, especially through innovations, new technological innovations, drone technology especially, which I'll cover very soon. That's given us that opportunity to do that. And businesses now have to think about how can they invest in technology that's resilient, technology that's flexible, and technology that will, for the next 20, 30 decades, 20, 30 years, will not go out of date. So future proofing your business, right? On top of that, you want to make sure that you're increasing your productivity while increasing your own business agility. So being able to be responsive to changes in the market, we want to make sure that we're doing that for our own businesses too. And at the same time, it's interesting because the transformation that's happened during COVID-19, where we've all gone online and we've all digitized a lot of information, it's made an ecosystem that's very data rich. So now we have access to chats or emails that were all exchanged online. We no longer, we don't even have to think about it. Like, these records are there, and it makes it really easy for us to look back and to access historical information, which then gives us data to plan for the future. And I'll also be talking briefly on how drones help us do that more. And finally, what is all of this about? This is all about improving our bottom line so that we stay competitive and we stay profitable during this period and after this period as well. So with that in mind, let me quickly introduce what is Polar Drone. So Polar Drone is an all-in-one drone solutions provider. We're based in 2 countries. So we're headquartered in Cyberjaya. I'm speaking to you from Cyberjaya in KL, so in Selangor. And we also have an office in Bangkok and a Bangkok team. So we work in a few different ways, but our primary mission is to help our clients understand the value that drone technology can bring to their business. And because of how wide drone technology applies nowadays in so many industries, that means working with so many, with a huge variety of different companies. But the mission is the same, which is to help you understand, as well as to help you see how that can help you increase your productivity and reduce costs. Because at the end of the day, your goals, it's our goal, essentially. So more about that at the end, but let me now talk about COVID-19. So I want to touch a bit about how drones have played a role in the way that we've reacted to COVID-19, specifically across one or two countries. So first thing you think about, if I asked you, what have you heard about drones in the past 3 months? Does anything come to mind? For me, I was watching viral videos, and this is something that stuck to me. So Italian mayors, I'm not sure if you've seen the video, it's worth a Google. They've been quite vocal about how important it is that their citizens stay in lockdown, because Italy was at one point in time really hard hit by the pandemic. And so here we see maybe a slightly comedic example of an Italian mayor who wants to use drones to broadcast his messages: stay at home, stay at home, stay at home. Which perhaps is not the first thing you might think your business would use a drone for, right? To broadcast. But I think this just goes to show how flexible drones are. While we see most drones carrying cameras, it's equally true that drones can be easily customized to carry any payload, including a loudspeaker, if that's what you want. But let's look at some numbers as well. So we've seen that COVID-19 has on a global level is still growing, and it's still very much a major issue that we have to keep in mind. Even as within Malaysia, at least, infections seem to have come under control. we still have to keep in mind that the possibility of it ballooning out of control is very real. And on a global level, that is still very much the case. I think what makes COVID-19 so dangerous and kind of spooky to a lot of people is the fact that it's not just passed between person to person. It can also be passed through surfaces. And I think we've all gone through the ritual, whether in the office or at home, of sanitizing, right? Sanitizing our hands, sanitizing our surfaces, our tables, sanitizing door handles, anything that people touch needs to be sanitized. Otherwise, the virus can live on that surface. And recently, earlier this month, there was this tragic case where they found that this woman from the US who came back infected 71 people, despite not actually meeting any of them in person. What happened was she used an elevator to get back to her unit, alone in an elevator cubicle. She left the elevator. Someone else came into the elevator after her, and it got spread through the surface, most likely of the buttons or a surface on the elevator where the virus was continuing to live for that time frame. And that woman, the second person who then got the virus, then spread it to another 70 other people. And so it's quite mind-boggling how dangerous it is to have surfaces, public surfaces especially, that everyone touches but may not be sanitized or ensured of its cleanliness regularly, because it just strikes you and you don't even know it happened. Therefore, it's super important that we sanitize, and we've seen that in public spaces, restaurants. We sanitize after every meal. In offices, we have a regular I hope we have a regular schedule for sanitizing our surfaces as well. But the question is, how did China, right? So China was where the first outbreak happened, and they were thrust into the middle of this chaos with so much uncertainty and so much questions in the air. How did they ensure that the spread of coronavirus was contained within their society? And it's interesting to see just how dramatic the change in infections were at the beginning to compared to the second, compared to like the other 75% of the time until now, right? So we've seen such a steep growth in January and maybe mid-February, and then it flattens out. What did China do to stop the spread of COVID-19? So they did a lot of things, but one of the things they did was they took it upon themselves to sanitize and fumigate, essentially disinfect all of the public spaces, especially in high-risk areas. So you can see on the left, these are the workers getting ready to be deployed, and on the right, you can see how they're kind of essentially manually walking through the streets, carrying disinfectant and spraying, fumigating all the surfaces so that coronavirus doesn't exist on any of them. But what if we could do this in a way that was more low risk because it doesn't involve humans? And how can we do it in a way that is more efficient? Because a human can only cover so much, right? And you can just see the sheer number of humans as it is that needs to be deployed just to cover one area. So what they found was that actually existing technology in the agriculture world. So this is a DJI drone. It's an agriculture spraying drone, and this drone is used usually to spray crops with, say, pesticides or chemicals or fertilizer or whatever is needed to cover large areas of land in a very quick way. And this has already been used within the agriculture market for a few years now. But what they found was that this technology could easily be harnessed to spray disinfectant as well. So why put a whole army of humans at risk when you could be sending machines that have no risk of getting sick from coronavirus out into the field to do disinfection work that was so much more efficient, because they could just cover so much more land in the same time. So we've seen that these pictures just show you examples of drones being used for disinfecting in different areas. So you could see here it's being used to disinfect a stadium. So surfaces that would otherwise take hours and hours of manual scrubbing or wiping, here is just a matter of filling up a drone, operating the mission, and then at the same time tracking the data. So you can see on the bottom right, there's a picture of almost how easy it is to plan a flight, and that flight is generated automatically as well. But the important thing is you also get a to track the data so that we can then review. Maybe you want to be sanitizing every day or every 2 days. That's an easy way for you to track when did we do this spray mission, what area did it cover, and when do we need to do it again. So and we've seen that this technology has been taken up by, I mean, it started in China, but it's also been taken up by many other countries. So Spain's military, for example, because Spain was another country that, as we know, was very badly hit by the COVID-19 spread at one point. They've also taken up using agriculture drones to spray disinfectant. And on the right, you might recognize those buildings at the background. That's our Twin Towers. And yeah, we use drones as well locally. In fact, we did have conversations about doing this, and it did happen. So that's a crop dusting drone, and we were using it to spray as well the streets of KL. So I want to talk a bit about numbers, right? Because we've talked about concepts. So how did China's response to COVID-19 using drones, how did it go? So it was actually quite a quick response, which is why we can see the numbers were kept in control quite fast. But even as early as February, we had achieved about 200 million square meters of spraying. So DJI, by the way, is a drone manufacturer, one of the largest drone manufacturer in the world currently. And they're based in China. So they harnessed the technology that they had devised to help this disinfection work, and they have covered. By February, they had covered 200 million square meters, with over 400 hours of operation time. And that's major, because if we think about it, a person would probably only cover maybe a few hectares in a day with spraying. But here we can see that just one drone in an hour is able to cover 100,000 square meters. And the best part is drones are not limited by exhaustion, right? We just change the batteries and they're up and ready to go again. So when times are really critical and maximum productivity is needed, drones perform. And we found that one drone is with a 16-liter capacity was perfect for that, because the flight time and the dispense, just the rate of dispense, worked really well for this effort. And so, as Alvin earlier mentioned, we have two parts that make up a drone, right? We have the platform, which is essentially what carries the payload. And the platform in this case was an octocopter, so an 8-propeller drone. This is probably one of the biggest configurations you will see in a multi-rotor drone, a drone that uses propellers, and it was carrying a 16-liter payload. And the reason why we need so much power is because the payload is so heavy. It's 16 liters of liquid, essentially 16 kg, in addition to whatever the body of the drone weighs. And these are some of the drones that were used. So the one in China was DJI Agra's MG1. That's the one we saw in all the photos earlier. Whereas locally, Polar Drone, my company, also has our own version of a spraying drone called the Polar V16S, which in fact you could see behind me if I tilt the camera just a little bit right over there. So that's the Polar V16S. Not the model that went out disinfecting, but essentially similar. So you can just see how big it is compared to other drones that are behind me, right? So these are one of the biggest drones on the market. So we covered how drones were used in COVID-19. We covered how it was used to disinfect streets. We also covered how, quite lightheartedly, it could be used to provide PSA announcements, like what the Italian mayor wanted to do. It could also be used to monitor crowds, as well as many other things if you really wanted to. But right now, I want to focus in a lot more about how drones help sustainability in businesses. So specifically, infrastructure inspection. So any companies that have big factories or have big power plants or any kind of big infrastructure, you know that it needs to be maintained, and it needs to be inspected regularly in order to make sure that it's compliant with safety and that it doesn't break down halfway. So as you can see here, on the left, that's an oil and gas plant, and on the right, we have a solar energy plant. And drones are already, as it is, currently used in large infrastructure inspections just because of how massive the scale is. It would take a long time for personnel to walk and to inspect everything inch by inch. And on top of that, it also reduces the risk. So if you were to do it manually, you would see yourself climbing into quite high, hard to reach places. But with a drone is naturally meant to take to the sky. So that comes almost as easily as, it doesn't make a difference even, like whether you want to do it high up or low down. So we found that, so these industries have, the inspection industry has embraced drones specifically because it reduces personnel risk, and it also makes time-consuming work happen so much faster. In addition to that, drones can carry different payloads. So while we humans are equipped with a pair of eyes that pretty much function in, well, what we call the visible spectrum, because we can see it, drones see so much more. If we attach a thermal camera, for example, we can see temperature, and we can see how what looks like a typical part of an energy plant is actually concentrating a lot of heat in one particular joint or one particular connector. And that could be a hint for where the weakest link is in this connection. So this reveals information to us that we usually would not be able to detect with human eyes. And a drone does it as easily as we see. In addition to that, with the wealth of drone data that has emerged, as well as the digitization of that data, meaning it's now encoded digitally, there's also been a lot of development of AI software. So algorithms rather than humans do the work when it comes to drone data. On the left, you can see how recognition algorithms are able to detect where they think there might be problematic areas, so that rather than having human eyes inspect each and every joint or each and every screw, the software highlights where there might be a high risk of problem so that you can spend your time more efficiently looking at just the problematic areas. Whereas on the right, this is an example of value add in a way, where temperature, surface temperature is given to you, even as you look at it, so you don't have to guess. Cameras and software are able to measure the surface temperatures using a thermal camera and feed that live to anyone who's viewing through the drone monitor. So let's look at another case study. So this is also by DJI, which is the drone manufacturer, and this is in SHENZHEN power supply. So usually it would take quite a long time, definitely over a week, to inspect a set of 71 high voltage transmission towers. So we're talking pylons, right? Massive pylons that are situated usually quite high, because you need to make sure the wires clear all the buildings that are around them. And it's also usually quite dangerous because of the current that's running through the wires themselves. So rather than deploy humans to go and do the inspection, DJI proposed to use drones, and all it involved were a team of 11 pilots who inspected the 71 towers within 2 days. So that meant about 35 towers per day by 11 people. And while they were doing that, they managed to identify 129 defects that needed to be fixed. So you can see just through this how much quicker inspection work can be done when you combine AI as well as aerial technology that drones provide to do work that otherwise would be so difficult for human eyes and a huge team to do. And the best part is that there is no risk. The risk at most is equipment risk, but you would much rather lose a drone than lose a human life. So this is a suggestion of kind of the drones that would probably have been used for this job. So here we see DJI Matrix 300. This is a quadcopter, so you can see four propellers. And the reason why it's 4 propellers is because it needs much less lift. So the body is significantly smaller, and also what we're lifting isn't fluid anymore, but just a small camera. So because of that, it can also fly longer, as well as be more agile because it has less weight. And some examples of the drones would be the DJI Matrix 300 RTK, which is the newest drone from DJI, the newest enterprise drone from DJI, which you want to use with the dual camera Zenmuse H20, which gives you both visual as well as thermal visibility. Or you could also use the DJI Matrix 210 RTK, which you want to combine with the XTS thermal camera, which also gives you thermal vision. But besides the outside, right? How have drones been used on the inside? We think of drones as something that takes to the sky and flies at really high levels. But at the same time, we see just even in this photo how drones are being used in the Audi factory to transport spare parts, because factories can become so huge, and it doesn't make sense sometimes to. I mean, you wouldn't want to carry that across large distances. So a drone automates that process and makes reduces the need for a lot of manual labor. This is an interesting case study from the Ford manufacturing plant in the US. So what was interesting about this is there's a significant productivity loss caused by the current workflow they were using. So what they needed to do was, for safety purposes, they needed to inspect these gantries. So these are huge metal structures that sit at the top of their factories. They used to transport equipment on that. But these are huge, heavy structures that sit on top of everything else, and therefore needed to be inspected regularly, at least once a year. And there were over 200 of these gantries that need to be inspected. So traditionally, what they would do is they would shut down the factory for 3 weeks because they needed to make sure that the area was clear of people before they could start their inspection work. Then they would build scaffolds or use lifts, bring in heavy equipment to lift people up to inspect these gantries one by one. What the innovation with drones provided is that there was no longer any need to do any of that. There was no need to shut down the factory. There was no need to bring in heavy machinery. There was no need to build scaffolding. In fact, drones could do it while operation was happening as per usual, which meant no productivity loss during that period. Perhaps everyone just wore hard hats, I don't know, but it made it so much safer for Ford to do this inspection, and it made it so much cheaper because they no longer had to disrupt their operations. And what they found was that drones provided equal quality, in fact, better quality results, because it provided an objective record of what the status of the gantry was, rather than relying on human interpretation by different engineers. So this also provided, going back to the idea of digitization, this provided the factory with historical records which they could then check and refer to in the future without having to physically move themselves up to that level to look at what they're discussing about. And so no disruption. It was much faster. It only took 2 people to operate a drone, what it took 24 people previously. When what took 12 hours of inspection, because of all the building, of the scaffolding, all the climbing, it only took 12 minutes, because all you had to do was press a button and the drone would fly up there. And it also made it so much safer because you're not putting humans at such a high level, such a high altitude where they could fall and get hurt. So next, I want to briefly touch on how drones are used in construction. So we've seen how drones are used to spray disinfectant. We've seen how drones are used to inspect equipment using very precise cameras. Now, how are drones used in construction to survey land? I want to talk to you about this case study in the US again by Brasfield and Gorey. They are a construction firm. And what happened, it was quite an interesting problem they faced. They had hired a subcontractor to build the groundwork for them for this hospital they were building. But they were not sure actually when the subcontractor was done whether the hospital was ready. The groundwork of the hospital was ready for the hospital to be built on top of that, because they felt that what was built was not quite according to plan. There was a mismatch between the shape of what, based on this is their suspicion, right? There was a mismatch between the shape of what was done in terms of groundwork and what actually the hospital required in terms of its layout. So how do you solve this problem? One way could be to send people to each point and to kind of estimate, or as closely as you could, draw it out what what that groundwork plan was like. But the solution was so much easier. All they needed to do was fly a drone, and using the mapping capability of drones, using a high resolution camera, they took photos, which they all stitched together. And by taking photos at different angles as well, a drone is able to, as Alvin has covered, determine certain points, which then can be used to develop a 3D model. So by doing that, they simply created a 3D model of what was already been built and compared it to the 3D model that they had developed for their plan. And it became as simple as comparing, overlaying one onto the other and seeing what the difference was. And so their workflow, which would have taken, again, much longer, I think around 2 weeks, could have been done in just 1 to 4 days. So what they had to do was plan the flight, which could be done in a matter of an hour, run the flight, which is also done in about 20 minutes, and then upload the image onto the mapping software, which will be then processed. And that could take a bit longer depending on how big these images are, maybe 1 day. And then you generate an auto-mosaic elevation or 3D model map, depending on what you want, which then gives you the data you need to compare it to whatever your plans were. So this is one excellent way of just making sure that construction is on track, because once you've built and put effort into, put material into building a structure, it's a bit late. So this is a comparison, very briefly, of kind of the time it would have taken to do it traditionally versus using a drone. And you can see that from 2 to 3 weeks, it's shortened to just 1 to 4 days. So the drones that we would recommend to be used for this kind of job would be a quadcopter, again, because we're only carrying a camera, so very light payload. And we don't even need thermal functionality in this case, because we're not looking at power or energy or heat. We're looking just at making sure that we're getting the points on the map and all the details of what we're trying to photograph here, as well as an RTK base station. So this is an interesting new piece of technology that sharpens GPS. So when you're driving, you use GPS. Usually you might see it moves around a little bit. And that's because normal GPS on the phone, for most purposes, are about 1 to 2 meters inaccurate. So when you're driving, it's not much of an issue because roads are not that small. But when we're talking about construction, when we're talking about specific points, it's important that we get it as fine as possible. And so the RTK base station is a piece of technology that works together with certain drones, RTK drones, to narrow that margin of error from 1 to 2 meters to just 1 to 2 cm. So you know that anything that is being mapped is accurate to 1 to 2 cm. And that gives you precise maps that you can then use to compare with your model, because having 1 to 2 meters of error is not acceptable in these cases. And so a popular drone for this work would be the DJI Phantom 4 RTK. And lastly, I want to quickly touch on oil palm. Oil palm, I'm sure everyone knows Genting plantations. So, and as Malaysians, anyone who's lived in Southeast Asia actually would experience haze season. So that's when it's really dry and then burning happens. And usually a lot of it can be attributed to maybe fires that occur in plantations. So Genting wanted to make sure that their plantations were not the ones contributing to the haze. So they needed to monitor the 22.3 million hectares of plantation, which is spread across Malaysia and Indonesia, to make sure that there were no forest fires and to make sure that there was no risk of fires emerging. The fastest way to monitor the estates was just to send a drone to fly. What they found was, compared to what older methods might be, for example, surveying on land, a drone could easily capture an area of 2,500 hectares compared to 5 hectares that a human would do if they were trying to get through the terrain on land. And that gives you also that also gives you a digitized output of data, which compared to manual surveying, it's much more reliable because it's objective. And on top of that, you can then make use of AI analysis, which you wouldn't be able to do with pen and paper, which speeds it up so much faster as well. 84 times. And of course, it's much safer because land in plantations tend to be quite hilly, or it could also be home to a number of wild animals. So for this kind of estate monitoring, because we're looking for heat, right? We're looking for signs of heat. We want to make sure that we're capturing thermal data as well. So the drone that we might recommend for this would be a quadcopter that has both RGB and thermal camera functionality. And this drone in question would be the DJI Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual. So anyone who is familiar with drones might have heard of the Mavic series. The Mavic series is a consumer as well as an enterprise series. So this is an enterprise drone specifically because it has thermal imaging capability, which is very useful for a number of users. For example, in inspection, and here in ensuring that forest fires do not break out. And one last final case study I want to talk about is one that my company did, Polar Drone. So we needed to make sure, we were helping a client to make sure that their plantation of new oil palm trees, so you can see they're much smaller than the regular oil palm. 5,000 acres of that was planted right, as well as making sure there was no gaps in where they were planted. Because oil palms tend to mature over 20 to 25 years, and during their maturity, they provide yield. They bear fruit every year, and having one tree die young or even not be planted properly could cause 20-25 years worth of yield in the future. So it's important that this data is captured early on, and so replanting can happen as fast as possible. So what the brief is to make sure that each palm was tagged. So this was digital tagging to make sure that we had every palm spot targeted on our map, as well as making sure that we could export all that data with coordinates. And the client also wished to know how many trees there were in each area, and also to identify, most importantly, where trees were not planted or where trees were vacant. So what we did was we deployed RTK drones, so drones that measure to 1 to 2 cm, as well as process the data using IRMap, which is one of our proprietary AI software that Polar Drone develops still to this day. It's continuous improvement. And what we found was through using this workflow, which took about a month, we planned the flight, we captured the data we needed, we stitched it, and then we analyzed it, and we were able to deliver to the client excellent results. Our tree counting was 99% accurate, and we were able to deliver the GPS coordinates of all the palms that we had mapped. So this is about 5,000 hectares in 2 countries, Malaysia and Indonesia. And we found that we were able to detect the difference of 851 palms. So comparing to their record versus what we captured, we found a discrepancy, and that then gave data to the client to relook at those vacant or unplanted spots and to improve their yield that would otherwise have been lost there. So we've covered very briefly how drones are used in a wide variety of industries to spray, to monitor inspection, to do thermal imaging. We've covered how they are used in oil palm estates. They can be used in oil palm estates to count trees and to provide very precise agricultural data. We also covered how drones are used in mapping work in construction sites. And you can see just by changing the payload how drones can provide such flexibility and applications in many industries. So a few words about Polar Drone. We're a tier 1 distributor for DJI. So a lot of the drones we saw earlier were DJI drones, which is the leading drone provider in the world actually, and they provide really high quality drones at an affordable price, and that's why it's been quite widely adopted. So we help clients to acquire DJI drones. We do have a tier 1 distributor status, which means that we work very closely with them. We're able to provide very specialized service if needed, including service with repair or service with acquiring specific products. On top of that, we focus a lot on the agriculture, mapping and inspection industry. That's where we have a technical team that specializes in this. We also provide solutions of drone sensors and analytics. So this is taking you through the entire workflow from start to finish. And so far we've processed over 300,000 hectares of data. We have a facility here in Selangor, actually, 20,000 square feet, so we're able to provide spare parts as well as technical support. And we have over 300 participants trained in our academy. And we work very closely with Drone Academy Asia to ensure that more people know how to fly drones safely. So very briefly, we cover everything from turnkey projects to training and support if needed. We also help product procurement. So any companies that are looking to acquire drones or don't know where to start, we're able to provide advice on that, as well as research and development for customizable drones or for specific needs that may not currently exist, using our in-house team of experts. With that, thank you very much for tuning in. And I want to urge you, if you are interested to find out more, to please visit our website, www.polardrone.com, or to drop us a call or send us an email at hello@polardrone.com. Thank you very much. Back to you, Eza.
Great. Thank you, Ken, for your presentation. All right, now I will pass this on to Yilin for the Q&A session. If you, just like to remind you, if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and everyone here is happy to address them.
All right, thank you, Isa. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that there were some questions posed and answered by Erin from Drone Academy Asia. So I'm just going to address one more there from Izzuddin Anwar. There is an info that promotes the use of hydrogen-powered drones for long endurance and heavy-duty works. Is the system widely available in Malaysia? Is it safe, and does it have proper regulations under current practice? So I believe this question is more for Ken from Polar Drone.
Hi, Izzuddin. Thank you for the question. Currently, it is not widely available, just because the technology, I think, is quite new. It's not available. Sorry, it's not available commercially as an enterprise drone solution. However, I can't comment on whether it's safe at this point in time because we've not been able to get our hands on one or to test it out. Regarding proper regulations, would you like to answer that, Alvin?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Mr. Izzuddin, hi, good afternoon. So actually, most drones that are being used today are battery powered, so they're using brushless electric DC motors. At the moment, hydrogen powered drones is not widely available or popular in Malaysia due to its nature of being higher risk and also the higher risk of explosion if not handled correctly. So in terms of regulation for Malaysia, we are not aware of the rules and regulations relating to using hydrogen-powered drones, as there are still a lot of work on Malaysian side in terms of regulations. So, but at the end of the day, most organizations have to make safety their number one, so they have to make a lot of preparations to ensure that the drone is being safely used.
All right, thank you, Alvin and Ken. We move on to the next question from Mr. Shafiq. I think he's from Medini Iskandar. So he's asking what kind of solutions do Polar Drone would have for smart cities or municipalities of the future? I think it's for Ken.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Shafiq. I think that a lot of the uses that I shared today would be very applicable to smart cities. I can foresee, for example, construction or development work. Integrating drones into that workflow would enable that process to happen much faster. In addition to that, in China, there have been developments to use drones as a crime prevention tool, where drones are able to track criminals, and like for example, if people were doing those classic Hollywood chases where you have someone trying to drive away, they've started looking into technology where drones are able to help with law enforcement in that sense, where it's able to track and provide live feedback for police who are trying to track down, let's say, someone trying to escape. In addition to that, I think drones also, I would be excited to see drones being integrated more into smart cities, especially from a regulatory perspective, where drone delivery is one big buzzword that's out there right now. Can we get our food, instead of Foodpanda driving by motorcycle, can we deliver by drones one day? And to be honest, if the regulation allows it or pushes for it. There's no reason why that can't happen. So there are many ways to automate processes that are out there. It's just a matter of developing the technology to a level of economy of scale that makes it feasible and economically incentivized for people to do that.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I think most importantly, it's regulation around the use, or rather responsible use of airspace and safety. Yeah. All right, thank you. Next question we've got from Hassanur Rahman Chaudhry. Is there plan to extend marketing in Bangladesh?
Hi, Hassanur. For the time being, we don't have any clients in Bangladesh. However, if you are, we do do a lot of overseas import and export. So if you would drop us an email at hello@poladrone.com, we'll be happy to see how we can help you.
And then another question from Izuddin. Does Poladrone and others provide customized AI software for hyperspectral image analysis, for especially for agriculture health assessment? So we're looking for AI.
Yep, thanks Izuddin. Yes, we do have a technical team, a software team in-house that works on IRAMAP. So IRAMAP is our online platform which we use for processing as well as visualization of data, and it is actually tailored very specifically for the agricultural sector. So while we provide it for generally a broad range of drone data, we do have specific functionality that is developed for agriculture. So you are able to view your hyperspectral or multispectral image data on IRAMAP. Regarding specific customized solutions that you might need, we have a team that will be happy to work with you to develop that, especially if it's a need that is not fulfilled by anything on the market currently. So I would invite you to please drop us an email at hello@poladrone.com, and we'll be happy to take it further.
All right, Izuddin, I think that also answers your comment on the chat box about the IRAMAP. Yeah. Okay. Shafiq has another question. I think it's for Alvin. So building on that, what is the future for a city with drone delivery? And let's say we've got many deliveries going throughout the day. Would there be a need for localized air traffic control? I think there would. Yeah. Alvin?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Shafiq, for your question. So actually, in terms of drone delivery, especially if we're talking about a city or urban environment, yes, there would definitely need to be an air traffic control, because your drone would not be the only flying object. There would be helicopters, low flying altitude, and even commercial airplanes. So we need to have proper airspace management. That would depend on the local authorities as well, the Civil Aviation Authority of the country, to be able to iron out all these issues, to allocate certain airspace for each of these different types of aircraft or unmanned aerial vehicles at different altitudes or different speeds, and even as well getting people's permission. If you're flying in an urban area, are people comfortable with unmanned aerial vehicles flying over their houses? Are they concerned about privacy, that issue? So certain issues need to be ironed out, but I'll leave that to the local councils and the authorities of Malaysia to prepare these guidelines for us to follow. I hope that answers your question.
Right, thank you, Alvin. Now, I actually have an answer to bring our perspective back to training. Question, really. So with reference to the current and future workforce, yeah, why is training important and more sustainable compared to 100% outsourcing, for example? I think this is a question for Alvin.
So your question, sorry, just to recap, the question was like a comparison between doing everything in-house versus outsourcing it, right? So actually, it really depends on how you want to run your drone program. Definitely, if you're doing it in-house, for example, you can control from all the aspects, from planning to execution to processing and analysis. You have control over all these steps, which means you can keep your costs low. You can control your costs. But you also need to consider that you need whether you have the proper human resource, the right people with the right skills to do certain tasks. Of course, you also bear the risk of all the stages, and you might take a longer time to start get the ball rolling to kick off this drone program if you were to do it in-house. If you were to outsource it to a party service provider, so yes, your cost will be much higher because you're hiring someone to do it for you. You might not have control of each of the stages, the planning, execution, process, analysis stage, but they can get it done. And of course, you being a client, then you can demand your service provider to provide whatever outputs that you need. That would be one good part of outsourcing it. But of course, you can also have a combination of both outsourcing and in-house solution as well, which is more like a hybrid solution where you do the execution and the planning stage, but you outsource the process and analysis, maybe because the service provider has better hardware to process the data that you collected. Because the data that you collect is not necessarily 10 photos or 100 photos. It could be more than 500 to even 1,000 or more for very detailed, very large areas that you are studying. Yep. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, yes, definitely does, because we're looking into potentially doing training and to encourage more young people to acquire this skill, because it would then mean potential job opportunities. Yeah. All right. Going back to the Q&A box, we've got a question from J. Razib, who asked about human transport using drones. He's asking, he's commenting that more payload means more rotors, more stable and safe, but consumes a lot of power. He's asking if that is true. So either Ken or Alvin. Humans.
I can, yeah.
Transporting humans.
Transporting humans. So let me answer the second question first. On whether more payloads means more rotors. I think it depends on the weight. So definitely, if more payload means more weight or more basically more downward force, right? So we need more upward force to take off and to sustain in the air. So it would actually be more stable, just because a lot of instability in drone flight is caused by wind. And if you are heavier, you have more mass, then winds will affect you less. And it would be much more stable because of that. It does also consume a lot more power, exactly as you say, because you just have more rotors to turn. So ultimately, it's about overcoming the downward force. Regarding transporting humans, drones, the innovation of drones have largely been to transport. I think the idea is to have it unmanned, which means to avoid the need for a human to be involved in part of the structure of a drone. Though that could be interesting. I think I've seen a video of some YouTubers who have used the drone to try to fly before. Don't recommend you do it at home.
Thank you, Ken.
If I may, if I may add to that, actually there are drones being used as air taxis in other countries. They are being tested to transport people, but then again, because that government of that country allows it for testing to be done. Yes, of course, more if you want to carry a heavier payload, we're carrying people, we're not carrying cameras, so definitely we need more rotors. Definitely, to answer your earlier question, which was whether quadcopter is able to carry or transport people, definitely need more than that. We're talking about 10 or even 12, 16 rotors. Consume a lot of power, yes, it will, because of the number of rotors, but we must remember we're also limited by the battery technology that we're currently at, which is lithium polymer batteries that most drones use. So yes, if there could be an advancement in battery technology or another type of battery, hydrogen powered, another type of source of energy to power the motors, hydrogen powered, for example, then it would be quite feasible and sustainable way of future transport as an air taxi.
Yeah, and it will be a definite game changer to the transportation industry, definitely. Yeah. All right. I think we're short of time. We've already reached 12:34 at this point. I'd like to close the Q&A session. And before I hand this back to our host, Isa, I'd like to say a big thank you to Ken, Alvin, and Erin from Polar Drone Academy Asia for sharing with us insights on drones, what are its uses for different sectors. I think that was very insightful. It was very clear. And I also like to say a big thank you to Sufan and her team at MASSA and MAJECA for coming on board to promote our session. I hope it has been very beneficial for your contacts and members. Thank you very much. And I'll hand this back to Eza right now.